Good morning. Welcome to EAA Compliance Blueprint webinar on building an accessibility testing program. My name is Bethany Servin, and I'm part of the marketing team here at UsableNet. Our panelists today, I'm very excited to introduce our accessibility experts. We have Giacomo, who is our Director of Accessibility Auditors, and Michele, who is our Vice President of Product Management here at UsableNet. And I'm going to hand it off to Michele to actually introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. Thanks everybody for joining. My name is Michele, and like Bethany said, I'm the Vice President for Product Management at UsableNet. I've been around for almost 2 decades. I started UsableNet in 2001. And yeah, my progression in UsableNet was starting as a webmaster and making sure the UsableNet website was accessible till the development of a meaningful product strategy. I'm very happy to be on this call and this webinar together with Giacomo. Giacomo, do you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you, Mick. My name is Giacomo Petri, and I am the Director of Accessibility Auditors at UsableNet. I have been with UsableNet for nearly 15 years. I started my career as a web developer, specializing in mobile web with a strong focus on accessibility. This is not only a key part of my professional background and, of course, the expertise of all auditors at UsableNet, but it's also essential to deliver practical and actionable solutions rather than just theoretical ones. Additionally, I actively participate in various W3C working groups and task forces, including the AGWAG, which is the Accessibility Guidelines Working Group, who defines for example, the WCG standards, the Y Area Working Group, the ACT Rules community groups, and many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. Let's see what is the agenda we'll be covering today. We'll do a very brief, I promise, introduction of what is the European Accessibility Act. This is a very short summary from the last week's session. Probably some of you have been able to attend. We'll then focus on testing, and we'll work together determining why testing is a fundamental part of your accessibility program. We'll then dig into the 2 classic ways of testing, automation and manual activities, and we'll understand how to better balance them. We'll then discuss how to create an effective testing program and how to inject the accessibility checkpoints throughout the life cycle of a website or a native app. And at the end of the session, before we'll start answering your question, we'll also provide some insight on real examples, so scenarios that we have dealt with during our experience. So let's dive in with understanding the European Accessibility Act requirement. It is a European Union directive that requires accessibility to be mandatory for certain products and services. Just to simplify the concept, websites are falling under these services. So e-commerce are considered services. The main goal of the European Accessibility Act is to harmonize the accessibility laws across Europe. But the interesting part is that it is presented as a legal floor, meaning that the European countries have the option to impose restricted regulation through the national laws, which goes a little bit against the goal of harmonizing the accessibility requirements, because every member state can actually apply stricter laws. So far, we have seen these individual requirements been in the area of the accessibility statement language, so specific templates to present to your customers what you are doing in terms of accessibility. And we have seen differences in penalties and fees that can vary across the entire European Union. With that said, there is a good news. And the good news is that from a technical point of view, nothing changes. So the technical reference for the European Accessibility Act is the EN 301549, which mirrors the Web Content Accessibility Guideline in its version 2.1 AA. It is important to note that in this moment, there is already a draft that is pretty much finalized. That upgrades the directive to mirror the Web Content Accessibility Guideline in its version 2.2. AA is not clear when will be published, but it is already has been already implemented. So together with these technical requirements that also is the same requirement that is popular in the United States. So in case you are taking already activities and actions to comply to the American with Disability Act, the good news is that from a technical point of view, you might have already done a lot and be already satisfying the European requirements. In addition to this, the European Accessibility Act requires the proof of compliance, so the collection of documentation and reports that prove that you have performed activities, and is also meant to focus on the process-oriented compliance. So it's also important to provide evidence of the changes that have been done in order to amend the company processes in order to manage and satisfy a requirement such as accessibility. Nobody knows how this requirement will be tested and verified in Europe, but it is one of the aspects that are mentioned in the European Accessibility Act. Let's now see why testing is crucial in an accessibility program. Testing, when we talk about accessibility in particular, and considering the evolution, the genesis of an accessibility program that might happen on a company, it's not just about finding issues. Obviously, I do a test in order to find issues, and that's the main goal. But an accessibility testing also allows to measure competencies and knowledges with the idea that while I work on accessibility, my employees, my departments will evolve in their competencies. That's the expectation. So a progression over time of tests might also reflect the progression of competencies and knowledges that are developed within my teams. A test can also be very useful to validate the process. Am I applying the right process? If I see a lot of regression, maybe that's not a competence issue, but simply a process issue. Together with the collecting test results gives me the opportunity to define and build the documentation archive that, like we have seen in this slide before, it is a requirement and particularly useful. And also the testing, let's say structure testing activity allows me to get inputs on how to implement an internal policy on how to implement an accessibility program. When we talk about testing, it is always important to understand what's the most efficient way to test in a way that is satisfying the requirements, the expectation, and guarantees an adequate quality. When we talk about accessibility, there is this constant balance of what I need to do manually so involving the experts, or what I can do and what I can do using the test automation. Giacomo will walk us through this aspect now.
Thank you, Mick. If you can go to the next slide. Those involved in accessibility frequently highlight, the significant limitations of automated tests. Let's take a closer look at these limitations and understand their impact. Automated testing covers approximately 10-30% of the WCG issues. The remaining items require manual testing and user evaluation. Automated accessibility testing has limitations in evaluating subjective elements, such as logical reading order, the meaningfulness of alternative text for images depending on their context, the meaningfulness of links in a specific context, or the overall usability of interactive components. All these aspects require human validation. Automated accessibility testing is prone to false positives, sometimes, for example, flagging issues that may not actually impact accessibility. Many automated tools, for example, can only test static pages, but we know that this is not sufficient. It's essential to assess accessibility dynamically as the page changes in response to user interactions. UsableNet efforts in developing Aqua, which is our accessibility auditing, testing, and monitoring platform, have focused on addressing and mitigating these limitations. However, some challenges are inherent to automation and, of course, cannot be fully resolved. Automated tests are often criticized for these limitations, for being unreliable and for not covering everything, for example, but they are still essential. Let's explore why incorporating automated tests is essential. Automated tests are highly effective for quickly validating routine tasks. Test automation efficiently detects common accessibility issues such as missing alt text, improper heading structures, color contrast violations, and many others. Automation provides valuable validation support during development process. Developers can catch and fix accessibility errors early, reducing the cost and effort of the remediation that we should do later. Automated tests are beneficial for scanning an entire website or digital platform. Automation can analyze large volumes of pages quickly, identifying recurring issues across multiple pages or, for example, components. Automation performs an objective evaluation. Unlike manual testing, which can be impacted by interpretation, automated tests apply predefined rules consistently across all pages. And this objective evaluation translates into a consistent key performance indicator, KPI. Automation allows continuous accessibility monitoring, for example, helping teams track progress and ensure compliancy over time. So, while test automation is essential, its limitations make it insufficient for testing for accessibility. Manual testing must complement automation for ensuring a comprehensive and, let's say, accurate evaluation of digital accessibility. So let's take a look at why. Manual testing guarantees a comprehensive WCG coverage, so unlike automation, manual testing can assess all the WCG success criteria, including complex and subjective aspects like, for example, keyboard navigation, focus order, focus management, dynamic content behavior. Manual testing can be targeted and precise. Testers can focus on specific user flows, specific interactions, and, for example, edge cases that automated tools might overlook. Manual testing evaluates how screen readers and assistive technology behave. the manual testing verifies real-world usability by checking, for example, how screen readers or assistive technologies in general interpret and convey and also interact with the content. Manual testing evaluates context and meaning. As we have previously mentioned about automation, automation struggles with assessing whether elements like alt text, link text, headings provide meaningful and relevant information. Manual testers instead can ensure these elements make sense in a specific context. Manual testing prevents false positives and detects what automation misses. By reviewing flagged issues reported by automated tools, testers can remove false positives and find more refined accessibility problems that, for example, automation might miss. Manual testing allows precise parameterization of issues. Testers, when performing an audit, for example, can categorize accessibility barriers by severity, which reflects the impact on the end user, complexity, which estimates the difficulty of resolving the issue, and, for example, responsibility, which identifies the team responsible for the remediation. And of course, this helps project managers prioritize fixes and allocate resources effectively. And finally, we have manual testing supports the entire life cycle. So manual testing is valuable at all stages, from early design reviews, for example, to final compliance checks, ensuring that accessibility remains a core focus across the product life cycle. But if we started listing the limitations of automated tests, we will have to recognize that manual testing also has limitations. Of course, different from those of test automation, but still significant. For example, manual testing is time-consuming and resource-intensive. It requires significant effort, as testers must manually navigate and evaluate each element of the page or the flow for compliance. Manual testing has limited scalability. Unlike automation, manual testing cannot easily cover large websites or applications due to constraints in scope. So testing every page, every user flow, and interaction is impractical. And the frequency, so continuous manual testing is challenging, making it harder to track ongoing compliance. Manual testing requires specialized competencies and knowledge. Testers must have expertise in WCAG guidelines, in using assistive technologies, and they must be aware about accessibility best practices to accurately assess issues. And sometimes manual testing is subjective. This subjectivity is inherent to the WCAG, as certain aspects require human interpretation. Subjectivity may arise from the auditor experience and knowledge, the interpretation of specific WCAG criteria. For example, some guidelines leave room for judgment, leading to potential inconsistencies. And understanding the service or product being tested. For instance, if a tester has never interacted with a self-service airport kiosk, they may struggle to conduct a fully accurate accessibility evaluation. In this slide, we have summarized the pros and cons of automated and manual testing in a comparative table. This table essentially recaps what has just been discussed, so I won't repeat myself, but the goal of these slides is to emphasize that we shouldn't discourage automated testing only because it has limitation and relies solely on manual aspects. Instead, it highlights how automated and manual tests are complementary. So despite their respective limitations, one does not replace the other, and both are crucial for achieving comprehensive testing. Okay, in this slide, we are going to present some data that we believe are significant. We will see the results of 4 different audits conducted over time on various websites, starting with the earliest one and ending with the most recent. The first audit identified a total of 200 to 2,145 issues, with 613 found automatically, meaning basically that 28% were detected automatically. The second audit, with 2,279 issues, had 599 automated issues, which accounts for 26% of the total. The third audit reported 2,188 issues, of which 260 were automated, which is 12% of automation. And the last audit, with 2,270 issues, had just 58 automated issues, representing only 2.5% of the total. There are some key insights to be drawn from these numbers. First of all, although not directly related to the specific numbers here, I'd like to emphasize that the percentages of automated issues are influenced by the quality of manual testing. So the fewer issues found manually, the higher the percentage of automated findings. This means that if manual testing is incomplete or partial, automation might appear to cover more than it actually does. For example, if we discover 50 manual and 50 automated issues, it results in a ratio of 50% issues detected automatically. But if the total numbers of issues that can be found manually on that scope is actually 450 instead of 50, then this means that automation covers only 10% of the total. Therefore, while percentages are often used to assess the quality of an automated tool, they also, or even better conversely, indicate the quality of the manual testing performed. The second key insight from these percentages is that the meaning of automated percentages has evolved over time as the industry has started integrating accessibility into the development process. Automated testing has often become the first step. So with a shift left approach, many accessibility issues are detected and resolved during the development, which reduces the number of automated findings in later audits or stages, of course, while increasing the percentages of manual issues. So for now, setting aside the first key point regarding the accuracy and number of manual issues found, the main takeaway is that the percentage of automated issues is decreasing overall. This doesn't mean that there are fewer automated issues or that automated tools are no longer needed. On the contrary, thanks to automation, issues are being detected earlier in the development process, before the audit, of course, saving both time and money. This shift also reflects a growing emphasis on accessibility from the beginning, which ultimately leads to better compliance and an improved user experience. So from this slide, we have learned that we should be cautious of tools that misleadingly claim to automatically test most accessibility issues, or at the very least, um, recognize that these numbers might not be reliable. Creating an effective testing program. To establish a robust and effective accessibility program that aligns with the European Accessibility Act, it is crucial to move beyond a single audit and prioritize the continuous integration of accessibility into your workflows. Compliance with the European Accessibility Act is not a one-time requirement, but it is an ongoing responsibility that demands regular monitoring, regular updates, and improvements to uphold accessibility standards. This also involves creating and maintaining comprehensive documentation and detailed testing reports to demonstrate your compliance efforts. By taking this proactive approach, you basically embed accessibility into your products and services, ensuring it is a core aspect of your organization rather than a sort of last minute task. We have seen that both automated and manual testing have their advantages as well as limitations, making it essential to balance them for optimal results. Now, let's explore where they should be integrated within the project phases. To make the most of automated testing, it's important to strategically incorporate it into different phases of the project. Each stage presents unique opportunities to leverage automation for efficiency and accuracy. So, development phase. During development, automated tests play a crucial role in ensuring that new features are built with accessibility and functionality in mind. Running tests while coding helps catch potential issues early, preventing them from becoming bigger problems later on. Additionally, executing automated tests after any code updates or modifications allow developers to quickly identify and address accessibility concerns before they reach the next stage. QA phase. Once development is completed, automated testing serves as a valuable checkpoint in the QA process. At this stage, the focus is on verifying that all the issues flagged during automated scans have been properly addressed by developers. Monitoring. Even after deployment, automated testing continues to be an essential tool for maintaining the overall quality of the digital platform. Regularly scheduled tests allow teams to monitor accessibility on an ongoing basis, catching potential regressions before they become widespread issues. Additionally, automated scans can be used to check areas of the platform that haven't been directly modified by an update or a release, but could still impact the overall compliancy and the overall operability of the website. We mentioned that manual testing can be time-consuming, so it's essential to integrate it strategically within the project, within the product. So let's explore where it adds the most value. Design review. The best way to address accessibility issues is basically to prevent them from reaching development in the first place. By conducting manual design reviews early on, teams can identify potential barriers and provide actionable feedback to improve accessibility from the start. And of course, this, first of all, helps preventing existing design errors from being carried over into development, while also providing suggestions for developers to create an accessible experience. Focused audit. Manual testing can be particularly effective when used in a targeted manner. Focused audit should be conducted on specific areas of the platform, such as recently modified components or new features, to ensure they meet accessibility standards before going live. This approach allows for in-depth evaluation where it matters most, complementing, of course, automated scan. representative sample assessment. To maintain accessibility over time, we should perform scheduled audit on a regular basis. These assessments should cover a representative and meaningful selection of the digital platform. By manually reviewing a carefully chosen sample, teams can catch all the WC violations. For instance, the annual audit is crucial, but not only for maintaining accessibility standards, but also for fulfilling legal requirements. For example, in countries like Italy, the accessibility statement, known as Dichiarazione di Accessibilità, must be updated annually to ensure regularly compliance. User experience testing. The most reliable way to validate accessibility is by directly involving people with disabilities in testing. The European Accessibility Act strongly emphasized the importance of user testing in ensuring digital inclusivity. Real users bring invaluable insights into how accessible and usable a platform truly is. Their feedback helps identify barriers that automated or expert manual testing might miss. And of course, by incorporating user experience testing into the process, teams can ensure that their digital product are not just technically or theoretically compliant, but they are really inclusive. To summarize this slide, manual testing will certainly be performed less frequently than automated testing. However, when strategically integrated into the project lifecycle, such as during the design phase, it becomes crucial for optimizing time and resources. And of course, it complements automated results, creating a truly accessible and user-friendly experience.
Great, thanks, Giacomo. So let's now see, practically speaking, how we could inject accessibility across the life cycle. Obviously, this is probably an oversimplification of your life cycle, but I think that highlights the most important checkpoints that where we can apply accessibility. We start with the design, and at design time, together with making sure that we are satisfying or we keep in mind the accessibility requirements, we should also do a design review. I think that it is quite important to understand that the designer role augments when accessibility is part of the requirements list. It is not just important to design an accessible user interface. It is also important to provide indications to the development team on how, for example, complex widgets are intended to work, to behave in case of different interactions that the user might have. This accelerates dramatically the coding phase, because the specifications provided by the design team will be richer and will be easier for the development team to implement the user experience in the correct way. When it comes to the coding, so the developer work, it is quite important that we introduce test automation as a regular check that the developers perform. Giacomo highlighted all the limitation of test automation, but if you mix the test automation, so using tools to verify quickly, maybe on a lower environment, let's say at least that portion of the Web Content Accessibility Guideline, and you also assume an incremental knowledge of the developers in how to implement an accessible digital property. The combination of these two aspects are a guarantee of a constant improvement into the accessibility of those digital properties. Then it comes the the stage where we need to populate the contents of the site, and also the activity that the content creation team performs might be crucial for accessibility. We have seen many examples where sites that were very much accessible from a structural point of view didn't have an accessible content, and this was pretty much invalidating all the efforts done before. So also in this case, it is important to rely on test automation and the body of knowledge that hopefully is growing over time. And the other aspect that I would recommend in this stage is making sure that the platform or the automation tools that you are using are not providing overwhelming results to the content creation team. It would be ideal that the tools in the hands of the content creation team are providing, as a result, errors that the content creation team can resolve, instead of providing a lot of issues that are totally out of the control of the content creation team. And last but not least is the constant monitoring that we can put in place. So it could be in production, it could be pre-production, that the mix of test automation, expert test, and the involvement of the disabled community. So performing user testing that are guaranteeing, for example, that the main flow of the site is always very accessible, are all practices at a meaningful cadence, obviously, that are really recommended. And these are the, let's say, a representation of the process-oriented conformance the European Accessibility Act is talking about. So not just collecting an annual test to prove that I'm doing something for accessibility, but providing documentation that reflects this shift left culture, and that everybody is involved in the accessibility program. If you consider the evolution, so over time, repeating these tasks, this will obviously help finding the issues, but also will allow you over time to refine the way you, the best practices you can create within your organization, and together with how to better define the process in order to reduce the amount of issues that you might find at the different stages, or maybe also how to make more effective the implementation of the activities that are required from an accessibility perspective. While UsableNet is highly focused on accessibility, we do believe that, the websites have their nature, and you should not completely change your ways of working just because of accessibility. Accessibility is an important requirement, but there are many other important aspects that you need to guarantee your business, your financial health, and everything else. So the efficiency of how to maximize the efficiency on accessibility is let's say an outcome of this over time monitoring of the results of your activities. One of the trends that we are seeing, and we are also promoting UsableNet, is thanks to the results of continuous testing over time and the shift left approach, it becomes natural to start adding to your design system accessibility notes, or maybe simply implementing in the design system accessible components. So you will just need to test the result of these components injected into the page. But you have a good guarantee, good reassurance that the component itself, so the atomic component, is pretty much accessible. So these are all practices that might seem time consuming, but on a longer time span becomes a way to make accessibility much more sustainable. So yeah, like I was mentioning before, just creating a testing program is not enough. So, and is not the focus, the objective is not just find issue, but also to validate the way you are implementing your program. And it is quite curious to see the evolution of companies that can create a healthy and sustainable accessibility program, where an issue that on the very first test that we conducted, for example, was representing something that they didn't know how to remediate, or sorry, they didn't know that they had to do, becomes after, of course, this journey, a bug, like a functional bug, so something that they can remediate quite quickly. They know the reason of the issue, and they know how to make sure the issue won't happen again. So these are all aspects that are process related rather than competence related. And the testing results are also representing an important source of information to determine where to perform additional trainings, or maybe changing the company policy because we were too ambitious in the expectations, or maybe we can require more to our teams. So as promised, I would like just to spend few minutes on real examples and use cases. We have been able to collect many in the course of many years. We have been involved helping people creating accessibility programs, and we are going to present three classic scenarios. The first one is companies scoring very high on test automation, but actually the site is not accessible. In one case in particular happened recently, but many occurred in the past, where this company was highly focused on scoring high in test automation. So an automated test will not report automated issues, or very few. And once they achieve this target, they thought we're done. So we have done everything, because from a legal protection point of view, we are pretty much safe, because the shield of having zero automated issues on a test is kind of represents a good protection layer. But the result is that there was an important issue on the header of their website. So every page contained a quite severe issue on the main navigation, preventing every keyboard user to use the website, because there was a keyboard block in the very first elements of every page. So this was an example of, at high-level analysis, the site looked pretty good from an accessibility point of view. But when we were involving the manual activities, or even a user testing activity performed by a user with different abilities, well, the site was far from being accessible, and highlights the importance of testing and focusing on also the manual aspects. Another use case is companies that are implementing an inefficient accessibility program. These are the companies that heavily rely on maybe the annual audit conducted by the expert, but they do not perform any process amendment. The result and the pattern that we often see is an audit reporting a considerable amount of issues, a lot of effort in the weeks, in the months just following the audits, where everybody's concentrating and heavily focused on remediating the audit, and then everybody forgets. And we start seeing issues that are increasing over time. So there is this regression until the following year audit, where pretty much the company needs to start from scratch remediating. So this creates a big inefficiency. Sometimes this inefficiency is forced by the company structure, maybe relying on third parties that are not stable meaning that the engineers of the third parties are often changing. So this obviously would open the door to many other conversations, such as how to better specify the requirements to my third party and so on. But also highlights the importance of clarifying very well the expectations and also maybe having more frequent checkpoints. I'm not saying that we need to do all this more frequently, but maybe checkpoints that are suggesting that maybe something is not going as expected, and errors that have been already remediated are being reintroduced over time. And the last scenario is related to a European company operating in the United States that receive a claim under the American with Disability Act. This company has an accessible website, is a long-time client, and the website is definitely in the list of the sites that we believe are very accessible. Regardless, they receive a claim, and when they came to the settlement table discussion, being able to provide all the documentation of their regular tests, their annual involvement of experts, the involvement of the disabled community, all that documentation helped dramatically at that table. And the settlement was minimal, and this was an example of how documenting the investment and the attitude and the activities were extremely beneficial. All right, with this, we are at the end of our presentation. There are a few questions we have already answered in writing. I'm going to pick up some more. There is one that I think I managed to clarify during the presentation, but I think is an excellent question. Can you better explain the part about process-oriented compliance? What is expected of the compliance? What is the expected of the compliance for this? Is what I mentioned before. So it's being able to demonstrate that tests and checkpoints are not just happening once a year on the website, but there are activities that are happening at the different stages of the life cycle. Ideally, also providing documentation on the trainings that the company performs for different departments. So the key aspects is demonstrating that there is a global accessibility culture within the organization, and accessibility is a responsibility and a focus for everyone in the life cycle. There is another one. If we have a list of all differences between European countries, not very easy to find it. Last week's session uncovered some of these. There is documentation online, but is also for us that we are very involved in this, and for our lawyers is not very easy. At the moment, we know that Italy and France require a different accessibility statement template. We know that in particular, you should be subject to the law of the European country, so the member states you belong to, unless in other countries there are laws that are already defining requirements for foreign countries. For example, in France, there is a requirement for every company with the annual turnover in France, so also foreign companies that in France are making more than 250 millions per year are subject to the accessibility requirements in France. And in that case, you might need to follow the accessibility statement templates required in France. And we are aware about penalties that are different. And I think that one interesting scenario is Ireland, where the fee can go up to 60,000 euros, but in certain conditions, in case the fixes are not put in place and there is a let's say a continuous lack of focus on accessibility, there is the risk of prison for I guess the CEO for the company. And this is quite unique. Other countries have mainly, let's say, are stricter in the definition of the penalties. Let me see other. There's another question that says, is documented testing with people with disability more important than technical conformance? Well, this is an interesting question. In the technical conformance, if we need to fulfill the Web Content Accessibility Guideline, includes also an in-use test. So if I need to perform an audit, we have seen before, test automation is not enough. So the technical conformance also include checks for what concerns the interaction with the elements within the page. So I would say that documenting the involvement of the disabled community is absolutely important, together with the technical conformance. I'm not able to determine from a legal point of view what is more important. I can guarantee that from the teams that are responsible to the maintenance of the website, both are very important. Probably if my site is not accessible yet and I know I have gaps, probably an audit would help. And then once I have reached a meaningful level of accessibility, the involvement of the disabled community allows me to do a step forward. In other cases, a regular check performed by, for example, a blind user or a motor disabled user on the main flow of my website provides a guarantee that my users are able to perform that flow, and that represents an important reassurance. One question says, as a web developer designer, what is something we tend to forget then creating a website to be accessible that you see is very common and we need to have at the top of mind? Excellent question. I'll also ask Giacomo's help to answer this question. I can start, and often is not just a matter of forgetting, is also that you have a stakeholder, and often the client wants things that might not be accessible or could be very complicated to make accessible. What we notice is the design team is not focusing on considering, in particular for complex widgets, how the interaction would be without a mouse, how the interaction would be with the keyboard, or another area where we are seeing still some gap, while probably is not on the color contrast itself, is more like on the use of color as an important source of information that we know is an accessibility failure. Giacomo, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I think that one of the core aspects is usually the urgency to complete a project that basically prioritize functionality over the logic of the page or the semantic structure of the page. So leading to a focus on getting things to work for mainstream users rather than ensuring that our content is accessible to everyone. I think this is one of the key aspects because very often we see pages that are functionally working as expected, but for example, when you try navigating the page with a screen reader, it doesn't make sense because there is no semantics. They are just meaningless containers. So I think this one is the key aspect when building an accessible page.
Yeah, and then maybe the very last thing that we see is often forgotten is provide and try to detail the expected behavior of widgets. So your development team, I mean, if you're a designer, your development team better understands the how to implement, in particular if you are using custom components. We have proven that this makes really the difference. Being able to explain the behavior of a complex widget to who will have to implement it has multiple benefits. Obviously, that it will be easier for the developer to implement in an accessible way this component, but also being able to explain something is also going to consolidate the designer knowledge in accessibility. So try to explain to somebody these things is very beneficial to this incremental competence gathering. With that said, I want to thank everybody for joining, and Bethany, I'll turn over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michele. Thank you, Giacomo. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar.